Alright, so we're going to do this tutorial, and it might be a little long because I don't do a whole lot of tutorials, so I'm not super good at siphoning these things down, and also I just don't know exactly what you know. Two missing. Okay, those are just the audio files, so I can hide those. It doesn't matter for now. You'll have those when you get into here. Yeah. Also, I don't know what you know, so I don't want to brush over anything, but if it's too long, you can just play it at 2x speed because I'm going to put this on YouTube. That way you can control the speed and it's just easy for you to access quicker rather than giving it to you on a flash drive. So I'm looking at how you got this set up, and I'm going to dump your main thing into a new composition and call that main composition. That's what we're going to render out of. Comp, not capital. And there's a reason for this. I'm going to give it a background layer, a white background layer. And this being in a separate composition with the background layer serves for our masking method, to solve for that pause and face in the star. So I'm going to drop this background layer down a layer. Command bracket is what controls up and down layers in After Effects on your timeline. So if you see things popping like that, that's me using a command key. Okay, so now that we got that covered, let's go into this 94 layer, which is where all your content is, and I'm going to take a look at how you got it set up. Again, here is the overall composition and then the 94 composition. So it's just inside of there. So now let's take a look at this. I see that you have these face and pause. And you have the animation that makes them rock back and forth, which is great. Keep that. We don't want to delete it, but we're going to extend this composition forward. Option bracket is how you extend that composition forward, or those layers, I should say. And we're going to extend those forward because we're going to do the jump animation first, and then we're going to let you do that rock back and forth. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing in a null here, and this null is going to control the overall position of the cat. And then I'm going to take the cat face and pause, and I'm going to pick whip or parent them to the null. So the one thing I like to do in the color conventions is I like to show the relationships of things. So if something is parented, I'll make it a version of pink, and I'll make its children a fuchsia or another version of pink, just so that I can immediately see those relationships when I'm looking at my compositions. And then, so what else do you got here? You got stars, star lines, textures, big star. And then, so now if you see this cat is controlled by this null. So parenting to nulls is huge. Eventually, if you open up files of people who work in this often, they'll have tons and tons of nulls. So it's just something that's important to do. So now I'm looking at what you got here as far as the star layout. And the background here. Okay, don't need the background because we got the background in the other comp, and these are cluttering up the timeline since we're not using them. So I'm just going to Shy Guy those and turn on the Shy Guy layer. So this is not deleting them because I know you're going to want them later, but it's just making it so that it doesn't clutter up my timeline and I have less things to look at visually as I'm doing this this work here. Pardon me if you hear these fans going in my computer. Using the screen recording and After Effects at the same time put some strain on it, so hopefully you'll be able to hear well enough as I do this. But so cool. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna bring in another shape layer, and I'm gonna use this big star as a mask instead of using it as a background. That just gives me a little bit more flexibility to do things with like scaling and moving this around and still having the shape of the star, but having a background that goes beyond the star shape, so I'm not stuck to that shape. If that makes any sense at all, hopefully it does. But if it doesn't, don't worry about it. I'm going to try to explain it a little bit here. So now parent the texture to that so those things scale together. But rather than doing it like this, you said something about the star being like a spotlight or a window into this space scene. So let's try to do something that holds true to that idea, or at least gives you that flexibility. So I'm going to take these lines and the stars here. I'm looking at how this is all set up, and I'm going to actually, I think, parent all of this stuff together. Yeah. So no track map, forget that for now. I'm going to take all these things, and I'm going to take this, and I'm going to hit Command Option C, which is pre-comp. And this is going to be my background layer. So if you click into here, it's got all your content. So normally with this, we would do this in Photoshop, and you would just have this texture go for this full square size. And you would have the constellations and all that stuff go the full square size and everything. I'm doing this like kind of a hacky way of just duplicating them, and you're going to get some stuff where the stars overlap and it doesn't look as good, and it's not going to hold true to your original design. So if you wanted to do this, you would want to set this up in Photoshop rather than what I'm doing here, which is the hacky way. But I'm going to do it this way just for the sake of showing you this idea. And when you get to this stage in your project, you'll do it better. So I'm not worried about making this super clean. But if you see now, you can use this star like a window or a spotlight into the scene. So all the stuff behind it stays in its position, and this star mask just kind of can move around the scene. So it's how you'll achieve that idea of like that spotlight effect that you were talking about. Um, but again, you'll want to do all this thing in Photoshop first. You're going to want this to be a composition that looks good even if it wasn't masked out, as opposed to what I did, which is just kind of pile a bunch of this crap on each other. So there you go. You got your background and you got your mask. And using this mask this way, you still keep the Photoshop texture that you were getting with the brushes in Photoshop. Because you're using an alpha mask, it just really reads the pixel data and stays true to that. So you don't have to worry about losing it as if you made a star shape in After Effects. It'll still hold that. So like before, we're going to color coordinate this so that we know everything's relationship. Actually, rather, let's do it purple and lavender. That way it's kind of a little bit more obvious. I don't know if that's more obvious, but whatever. Purple and lavender, and then pink and fuchsia. So, another one you could do is orange and peach. Maybe I'll do that later. But yeah, just color coordinating is almost more helpful than naming your layers even. Just because it's visual and it's quick and you see it fast. So now you got your cat and you got your background. Those are the two big elements, and you got your cat wiggling its head here. So let's look at this. Let's make the composition longer. You have a long composition here anyways, but just, you never know. It's always better to have a longer composition that you can then trim down later rather than having to keep extending your composition as you add elements. I prefer to have that extra room there. So again, option bracket gives you that longer thing. And then this section, I want to show you something here. We could either extend this layer to make this long enough. We could duplicate it, or we could do what I call what is known as time remapping, which basically allows you to stretch the timing of things. Just make sure this goes beyond the 30-second mark, and then you can make this layer as long as you want without having to mess with it. This is always good for if you don't actually have any animation in the pre-comp, because you can just kind of control it real easily there. Alright, so later on, I'm going pretty slow just to explain everything. I might trim this down so that it's not a 45-minute tutorial, because those are always painful to sit through, or I might just let it be what it is and you can kind of skip through and get to the sections you want. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use this preserve transparency tool rather than a mask, and you'll see why later. It's preferable, and because of this is the reason we did the background and second composition. There's times where an alpha mask works better, but sometimes this works great. But if you see, the cat can kind of sneak behind the star now, and we're going to have it pop up from the bottom. We're going to overshoot the star a little bit, as if it jumps in the air, and then we're going to have it land back here on this position. And these preserved transparencies are how we're going to do the masking for this section. We might do some alpha masking later, and you kind of already got the alpha mask understanding from the big star composition. So we got this full cat position. I'm going to separate these dimensions to X and Y dimensions. I think it's easier to deal with things like that. Then you can use an X and Y dimension. You get the arc kind of naturally rather than controlling it with keyframe interpolation. So we're just going to do the Y value anyways. So it's just easier to separate the dimensions and only worry about one value. So this is your end position. This is your start position. And then let's get an overshoot position. So how high do we want the cat to jump? Maybe about here. Cool. So this is the end position, and as you can see, the feet and the face are still behind the star. So when the cat jumps and comes back down, its head would kind of bobble a little bit. It would kind of, jerk its neck down a little bit just because of the weight of its head. So let's get that effect going so that it feels a little more natural. So these are linear keyframes right now. So this is going to look really unnatural. But we can kind of adjust these and give it some easing. So this is the Motion 2 plugin. I don't know if you know how much you know about plugins in After Effects, but the Motion 2 is crucial. It'll save you so much time. If you end up even doing a few animations, it's worth it. It's about $30, and it'll save you tons and tons of time. Everyone I know who animates uses it, but for the sake of this tutorial, since you might not have it yet, we'll just do easy ease keyframes, and then go into the graph editor, kind of do the old-fashioned way. What I'm doing here is I'm holding Option and moving the keyframes around. This is a good way to kind of batch edit your keyframes, move them around a little bit, and kind of like make this timing quicker without moving each individual keyframe. So now we're going to take this into the graph editor. The graph editor is super important in After Effects. You use it for everything. Basically what it is a Bezier equation that controls how an animation moves. So easy ease or Motion 2 keyframes are great, but to get really custom animations and really refined animations that just feel, silky smooth, you got to go into the graph editor and really massage out the keyframes that way. So basically, to explain this, these are Bezier panels or paddles. This is the value editor. So as you move these paddles, it'll control where the cat is in relation to that position. So in other words, when the slope is steep or almost straight, rather than when the slope is very wavy and curved at the beginning and ends, it'll be moving faster. So let's take a little bit of the easing off the end and a little bit of easing off the beginning, as I just did up here, because as the cat reaches the ground, it's not going to ease in, it's not going to slow down before it hits the ground, and it's not really going to slow down when it's jumping in, but it will be slow at the top here. So that's what I'm showing you. When it jumps, there's no easing. It's starting forcefully, and when it ends, it's forcefully. In the middle, it should be slow when it's at the top of its jump. Actually, let's get rid of these Y keyframes on the face for a little while, just because they're kind of distracting and making it hard for me to tell if the jump is looking the way I want it to. So I'm going to pull all these in. So starting to get there a little bit, starting to look a little better, but really I want the middle to be kind of, I want the top of the jump to be pretty much in the middle here. So let's look at this. Okay, so it's starting to get a little bit better. There's this weird point here where it starts to slow down and actually gets a little higher. That wouldn't be the case, and the reason for that is because I moved those keyframes together after I adjusted the Bezier equation here, so it just got too sloped, but we can fix that quickly. So let me just show you the difference between a speed graph and a value graph. This is your speed graph. There is times where this is easier to use, and there's times where the value graph is easier to use. Generally speaking, if you're dealing with position keyframes, I like to stick in the value graph. And then when you go to things like scaling or trim paths, then that's when the speed graph is super helpful. So let's keep massaging this out, making the jump at the beginning a little bit slower, having it really hold at the top of the jump, and then come down hard on the ground. So starting to get there. I'm going to want the cat to pop a little bit higher here. So I'm going to just hold shift and drag this keyframe down. This is kind of the advantage of using the value graph, is you can control the values here rather than just the speed. So starting to get there. It's still going to look a little bit weird until we add a couple more elements here, but you're starting to get this kind of exaggerated effect where it jumps up and it hangs in the air for a little while. Let's just keep editing a little bit so you get this real exaggerated effect. And let's hold on. Let's add this. These Y on the face back in so that I can kind of see how it's bouncing here. And again, this is what we call secondary motion, just to really give it a realistic feel, even though it's exaggerated and it's animated and it's much more than a jump would really work. When you feel these like physics that are in the real world, that's when people really start to appreciate the animation you've done, and it just gives it this kind of, like, I don't know, credibility or realistic feel that ends up selling your work. But the head isn't the only thing that would bounce down. The paws would too, a little bit, but not as much as the head. So we're gonna give it the same effect, but we're just gonna make the down values a little bit less drastic on the paws. Again, to kind of sell this idea and make it feel natural and well done. So let's go in here. You see how one is a lot more drastic than the other? That's because the head moves more than the paws do. Now, when looking at this, it actually looks pretty similar to the speed graph. And the reason for that is just because the starting and end frame for both of these have the same value, and they just bounce down in between. So if you look at the speed graph, it's going to look pretty similar, except for one's upside down. Don't worry about that for now. I'll show you that later. So back in the value graph, let's take a look here at the cat, how it's bouncing. Okay, so what this is, if you understand this, it means it's easing in to the bounce down. It's going to hold on the down frame a little bit and ease back up and ease out. So that's not what we want. It wouldn't ease on the way down. It would be more of a jerk down because it's reacting to physics. So let's edit that a little bit. We'll try it all together at once, and then we'll do each one individually, because we're obviously not going to get the effect of dragging them the same way because they're not moving the same amount. So here's the paws. We're going to have it ease a little bit because the cat would probably be making some effort to catch its fall and keep its head and feet steady, but it would definitely not be able to do it completely. So if you look, it's starting to get a little bit better. Let's adjust a few more things so that this really is a sellable motion here. Let's make it faster first off. We don't need it to be as long as the jump itself. And then let's drag it in a keyframe or two. It actually would start on the keyframe that it hits the ground, but I always kind of drag it in a little bit and fake it. It doesn't have to be exactly, and sometimes that sells your idea a little better. So it's starting to feel kind of right with these motions combined together, but it's not right yet. So if you think about it bouncing back up, it would ease out a little bit. It would not ease out quite to the extent that we have it. So let's edit those values. Nah, still doesn't feel right. Let's see here. Think about it this way. When it bounces down, it would ease out. So it would Try to catch its fall a little bit, and then as it reaches the ground, it would eventually be able to catch it. So the ease out on the bounce would be there, but then it would kind of jerk back a little bit as physics come into play, and it would kind of overcompensate. So the cat would ease out and then overcompensate. So let's play this, and then let's get there again. And please, you can fast forward through a lot of this stuff, or at least listen to it at 2x speed. I know I'm kind of taking this very slow, but I want to kind of think about the methodology here rather than just show you how to set the keyframes, because that's what really makes it nice. So I'm tired of dragging this to the beginning, so I'm just going to edit these with B and N keyframes, beginning and end. That's how you set this like loop, which is just really for viewing a certain section of your animation over and over again. You often end up watching the same piece tons and tons of times, so it's just useful for that. So let's drag this whole thing and make it a little faster. And so now you're starting to feel this like pretty like cartoony, exaggerated jump. But I'm still not happy with the way this looks. So as I was saying before, on the bounce back, the cat would have kind of overcompensated, so it wouldn't really have eased back into the head pop-up. It'll be similar to the beginning of this, where it'll ease out and then it'll kind of pop back real fast, and then ease back into the top position. So let's get that effect. Let's exaggerate it a little bit more just so that the stuff's clear. With animation, it's a lot like movie verse plays, where you over exaggerate because there isn't all the subtleties of live action. So there you go. It's starting to feel pretty good. You'll massage this stuff a lot more than me. This is already going to be a long tutorial, I know, because it's already been longer than I probably would have stuck around for a tutorial myself. So I just want this to, be as fast as we can get it. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time refining everything. I'll let you do that stuff when you recreate this, or do something completely different and just use some of the stuff I'm teaching you to do your own thing. But it's hard to view these things from the beginning, so let's just drag these compositions forward and look at so that it just waits a second before the cat jumps. And then so what I'm doing here is I'm going to show you how to solve the mask problem you're having with this preserved transparency layer. So I'm putting a second version of the face and the paws underneath the first version of the face and the paws. And the reason for that is so that when the cat does reach over the star mask, it won't have the little piece of its face and paws missing. So I'm going to delete the keyframes on it, and I'm going to parent them to their respective layers. So the second paws are parented to the first paws, and the second face is parented to the first face. So now as it reaches over, you can see it stays there. But we have an issue. Now at the beginning of the animation, we lost our whole mask effect, which is the point of that preserved transparencies anyways. So there's a solution for this. And it's going to feel a little hacky because you have an extra set of layers, but it's not. It's really the quickest way and the easiest way to achieve the effect you're looking for. So what you'll do is just drag these to here or cut them to here so that they're not present until the cat's already in the star. So now it starts behind the star mask, pops up, lands on the star mask, and we've reached pretty much the effect we wanted with just the four layers, and that's fine. That's perfect. That's exactly how we want to do those types of things. That's the whole reason why you can control the length of layers in After Effects, and it's really the simplest solution for this kind of effect. So now you have your big star layer here, your background, and your cat. It's fine, but let's do something with the star more interesting than what we have. You could do kind of a spotlight effect, whatever you want. I kind of like when one layer triggers another layer. So for me, a fun thing to do here would maybe make it feel like the expanding of the star is what pushes the cat up into frame. So it feels like the star is what gets the cat up there. So we're going to exaggerate the easing on the star a lot, make it really ease in and ease out, and hopefully make it feel like the cat is getting knocked into frame by the star's expansion. So it doesn't yet. And the reason for that is because the star expands and then there's a pause and then the cat comes up. But if you bring the star expansion closer to where the cat goes and find just the right moment for this, maybe mess with the easing a little bit, you can make it feel like the expansion of the star is what knocks the cat up into frame. Maybe not play with this easing. Maybe yeah, let's make the still ease in here, and let's look at the speed graph, because this is really when I like to use the speed graph, is on scaling animations or trim path animations, things that don't inherently have a position value. So I want to explain this real quick. Similar to the value graph, the curve is what kind of suggests speed here. So when it's sharpest or tallest, that's when it's moving quick, and as it gradually comes in, that's how you know it's moving a little slower. So slow, fast, slow is kind of the cadence of this. But since the slope is more gradual on the back end, that means it slows down more on the ease out than the ease in. So you're starting to get kind of what you want, where it seems like the expansion is what makes the cat jump. But let's drag these forward a little bit so it has a little more relationship here. Let's see what that looks like. Kind of feels a little bit like the cat's already in the air when the star expands. But if we maybe drag them forward a little bit, it feels a little bit more like the cat's still on the way up. So that works for me. Yeah, we'll just view that a couple times. So yeah, scroll through. Feels like I feel the relationship there, which is really what I was going for. So let's think about how we would make this loop. For an Instagram post or something, if you're going to do a little simple animation like this, you probably want it to loop, just to keep it interesting, because the videos inherently loop on those platforms. So it's kind of like you want to take advantage of the platform you're posting it to. So what you'd probably want to do is maybe make the cat pop in. Then in the middle there, you have, let's leave some space for it, but you have the head bob back and forth. And then maybe the cat jumps out of frame and it kind of like sucks the star back into the center. So you got pop out here and then head bob. This is where you'd want to put that animation you've kind of already done. And then cat pops back out and the star closes. But what we got here is we need to add a value or a keyframe here so that, and do a toggle hold so that the star doesn't, so the cat doesn't jump right back up after it lands. So we're not going to actually make these, I'm not actually going to do this for you because, again, this tutorial is already too long, and I just want to show you maybe the methodology I would do. Pop and back out, star closes. Just to get this nice little looping animation that people can watch over and over again. It feels seamless, but I'm not going to, refine all this stuff. One thing I might do just to make it a little more interesting is on the star going out, maybe you make it rotate a little bit. So cat jumps, star rotates as it falls out. I don't know. Play with it. Whatever you want to do works for me, but I'm just showing you kind of maybe make some interesting animation out so that the loop is seamless. But for now, you can figure that stuff out when you're ready to do it. And also the bobbing of the head, I'll just let you kind of do in between. I'm just kind of showing you this beginning part here where the cat jumps into frame. And then, so the one thing I do want to show you besides this little pop in, even though I'm not showing you the end part and I'm letting you kind of figure that stuff out, the one thing I do want to show you is how I might make the cat have a body that kind of jumps up and it's behind the cat, and then as it starts to fall down, the cat's rear end kind of goes above its head, and it falls on its feet as cats generally do. So how I might do that instead of creating this in Photoshop, I might actually just do it in After Effects because some of these value or properties, if you're animating them a specific way, actually really work just to create in After Effects better. So I'm going to just use a line for the cat's body. It's not a focal point. It's only in frame per second, so I'm not interested in illustrating a whole bunch. And it's actually, if we make it a line, we kind of got this specific animation that I was thinking about when you showed me this that I think could work well for this. So it's a line right now. It's white. Doesn't look like the cat, but we're going to address all that stuff. Let's make it a little narrower so the cat doesn't have such intense shoulders. Let's make it the color of the cat maybe a little darker since it's behind its head. The light would hit it a little darker. And then we'll add a thing called a trim path. I use trim paths all the time, super useful. Basically, you can control where this line value goes without changing the shape of the line. You're going to use this all the time if you start doing a little bit more of this animation stuff. Believe me, it's worth learning. So trim paths, remember that. And then we're going to do something just to make it match the illustrative style that you already have from Photoshop. And we're going to do this thing called roughen edges. And we're going to turn the complexity all the way up. And let me zoom in here for you. You can see how it kind of creates the same edge as Photoshop. I'm doing it very fast. There's values you can play with to make it match a little bit better, but overall it looks similar to the way you've used your brushes in Photoshop if you kind of just take this roughen edges property. And then we're going to parent it to the cat because we're still going to have it follow the cat's position. So we're going to make it fuchsia, name it cat body. And now it's a part of the family. So we got a full cat here, and we're gonna give it that preserve transparency, but it doesn't look quite right to me. So what else can we do? Let's take another one. We'll duplicate it. Command D. It duplicates. Give it like a lighter color for the cat's stomach. Drag that down a little bit. The shoulders still are weird to me because it doesn't have a neck, so let's drag them all down a little bit. Not quite that much. Bring the stomach up a little bit. Oop, nope, not that one. Stomach up. There you go. Obviously you'll probably make this a little bit more refined and nicer when you do this, but we're trying to, just give you a little bit of an effect here. So you got your kind of hot dog cat here now, but how do you make it so its butt goes above its head when it's falling back down as cats kind of do? Let's raise the whole body here and really make it a hot dog cat. But this is where the trim path actually comes into play. Not roughen edges, shape. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to find this stuff. Trim path. Here we go. So start and end values. You can control both the start and the end values, which is what we're going to use to make it essentially go from underneath the cat to above the cat. So let's adjust this. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And then its stomach, which is lighter. Keep going. There you go. So now we have it only being below the cat here. So it pops up, and hey, that looks like what we had before. But on the way up here, or on the way back down here, we can make it so that its butt goes above its head, like this. And then stomach is not wanted at this party. It's not its back, so the stomach's just going to get completely removed on the way back. So you can see the stomach when the head pops down. Let's get rid of that. Up now, but now it stays there, which doesn't look natural. So we're gonna fix that too. Drag these forward though. Up, up, up. now it's on its way back down. The butt kind of goes above its head. And then when it hits the ground, its body should jerk back in front of the cat. Or to the bottom side of the cat, in other words. So, stomach, we don't need that because you won't see it anyway. We just need to edit the back values here. Wrong one. There you go. So now its body is below it, above it, and then when it hits the ground, it's back to nowhere. So these are just linear keyframes, so they don't look the best. We'll just drag them to here. Adjust that to there. Let's get this, let's make it a little bit longer. That doesn't look right, so. Let's see here. Pull that there, actually, because you don't want it to, you don't want the body of the cat to go above its head until the momentum pulls it that way. So it's already on its way back down when that happens. So let's give it a little bit more here. And let's give it some easing values. Let's see here. We'll just mess with this until it feels right. This is the value graph, which is why it looks like this. This part I'm going to speed through a little bit, just because it's really just playing around to find the effect you want, and you don't need to be sitting here watching this. It's too boring. So we'll speed through this a little bit. So that's starting to feel right to me. Again, this is more of an art than a science, so whatever you think feels good to you, that's the values you want it to be. It depends what kind of world you want this cat to live in. Do you want a cat to live in the world with less gravity than others? Should it feel very fun and poppy? Should it be more realistic? It's all up to you. So whatever you think looks right, that's the right answer. So let's lock these and let's give it a tail, just because. Your cat should have a tail. I skipped it because I kept playing with what the tail should look like, and that's not really important so much as just how it might animate. So I just kind of skipped ahead to this. The cool thing about 2D is you can kind of fake the way things work. So for this cat animation, we'll probably just move the tail up with a Y position value, so that because it's going to look the same as if you did something more complex, because you can't really see the perspective on this tail here. So you're going to just kind of do this, and this part I'm going to speed through as well, because again we're getting really long here and we don't need to see it all. Basically the important thing is we're controlling the tail's position here with the Y. So I'm going to skip through all this stuff. You'll kind of see it go through until I massage it out and it works right. And then we're towards the end here. It's starting to look right. It's a little bit unrefined, but for the sake of showing you how this stuff works, it's plenty good enough, and then you can kind of play with this stuff so that it feels right to you. So using that thing, let's take a look at this. Let's make our composition about 4 seconds. And just watch it through a couple times. So as you do this, make sure you do some of the stuff that I was saying. We did hacky. Make sure you do it a little bit better. I'd extend the background in Photoshop if you don't mind putting in that effort. You might massage the way the tail animates a little bit better, but for the sake of this is plenty good enough. So yeah, feel free to ask me whatever questions you want at work, but this is just enough for you to get an idea of how this might look.